Hi, how's everyone doing? Got some exciting stuff today. I'm going to take a break from doing a lot of all the manual labor. We're going to do something fun today. We're going to install a WOT Box, wide open throttle, N2MB WOT Box. Got it right here. My lovely assistant here is holding that. And we're also going to install the N55 inlet pipe, or rather air intake pipe, J pipe that comes off the turbo up to the intake. Doubt it'll make any more power. I doubt this does anything at all. I have a pure stage 1 equivalent turbo, but I saw it cheap. A guy's parting out his car and scooped it up, so I figured I'd pop that in, since at the same time as I'm taking all this off to get to the wiring harnesses for the WOT Box, I could slap that in. So started out, I've got all of my pinouts. I've done some research on new TIS to get all the pinouts for the DME. As you probably already know, the N55, the DME is on the intake manifold down here. So we're going to start by taking off our air intake. It's my AccuSump. I'm going to have to get this out of the way and take the cover off the underhood fuse box. I think they call it the electronics box. Things I didn't show you, the cowl. I think these are things that you can do pretty easily yourself. The cowl, get the air filter off. I have the BMS filters, but the actual air filter cowl that comes off in a couple bolts. Excuse the dirty car. You can see all the dust down there. We've been working on wide bodying this 135i. Looks stock, but those are 315s on the front, 315s on the rear. Molded it, fiberglassed it, blended it into the panel, and painted it. And the paint came out pretty well for my first time doing paint. Still needs to be wet sanded and polished, and it'll probably have a nice mirror finish. But that's the wide body. It's done. And we'll get to work on cleaning this engine bay up. But like I said, for today we're going to do some fun stuff. We're going to try to get that WOT Box in and shoot some fireballs. Alright, let's get to it. Alright, so I apologize for not doing this in real time, but I don't have a tripod and I'm just recording on the cell phone that I'm getting my information from on how to do this, all my notes and my sheet with the pinouts. So, this is pretty straightforward stuff, so I'll show you, working backwards, I'm showing you what I've done. So air intake is off. As you should already know, that's just this quick clamp. It just pops off these pegs on this side, and you just got to remove the wire harness from the clips. From there, I also removed the electronic box cover. There's locking tabs on both sides. You just move those over from lock to unlock, and then you have to pop these black brackets up. As you can see, they're not, they're usually down and locked in place, and you got to pop them up. And they can be a pain in the ass, but this pops right off once you do that on both sides. And then here's your electronic box. I have to review my wiring diagram before we go any further, but I'm pretty sure we're looking to get power from underneath this fuse block. But for right now, I just want to show you I've prepped the harness for the WOT Box. I've got my ground. I plan to use this spot right here, which is usually for the cowl. But I found that the little ring that they give you fits right inside there, and I think that'll work just fine. I'll clean off the paint to get better contact, but that should be a good ground once that's cleaned. And the other thing I've done is cut my wire shorter. I plan on dropping the WOT Box right down in this spot right here. And the N55, the DME is again on the intake manifold, so you've got a lot of room in here. All really is what's happening here is your fuse box in your cars. The wires are being passed through up and through this harness. Some things are fused. You're getting power from the battery flowing into this box as well. So pretty much all your power is coming from here, going into the car, and then all your information, your CAN wires and all that stuff are coming back out of the modules under the dash and going back to the DME to feed it information. So we can intercept the coil coil charging from right here in this electronic box. I know N2MB at first was like, oh, you got to cut into all 6 of your coils to interrupt power. You know, the coils are always charging. They're always got a live wire connected to them, and then they have a second wire that triggers them to fire. So what the WOT Box does is it intercepts the charge, you know, the 12 volts constant charge, and it cuts it so that the coil can't charge, and thus it can't fire. So what we're gonna do is I found the connector where power comes from the battery to this post. From this post it goes to your starter. It also comes through the back here. You know, you've got various power wires that go to various blocks here, and I believe it's this 40 amp fuse is for the coils. That's all it does. So one of these wires we're going to be tapping into, I believe, and I can't promise you that your electronic box is going to look exactly the same as mine. This is a 2011 135i, and I believe when I was on newtis.info looking around at the various connectors and wires, the 335i, or at least some of the older ones or newer ones, I forget which, had slightly different fuse and ignition related wiring. So I'm pretty sure that's what I'm looking for. There's also a connector down at the bottom there. I'll get back to you in a minute on that. But what I wanted to show you right here is how I'm prepping this harness. These two orange and red, I believe in older WOT boxes will be red and black, but this is going to be your power in and power out. You're going to be cutting the charge wire for the coil, the 12 volt wire for the coils, and coils only. You want to make sure you're not cutting power to the injectors, because if you cut power to the injectors, then you know you're not going to be shooting fireballs. You're just going to be shooting blanks. You're going to just be misfiring. So you want that fuel. Sounds horrible. You're going to be wanting that fuel to be spraying while the ignition is cut, to dump into the exhaust, and that's what's giving you your anti-lag properties, and you know, basically making all that noise and fire and all that cool stuff. So I cut these short. These are going to go right here somewhere. Haven't determined that yet. Ground right here. You've got other spots for grounds. A lot of times, I know JB4 I think uses this strut bolt or something like that. I forget which. You could do that too. You could take off one of these nuts and drop that hoop onto there and secure that down, but I think that'll be fine where it is. And these 3 wires is your throttle, your accelerator pedal, and your crank position sensors, I believe yellow. I forget off the top of my head, but I cut these 3 short, put 3 male quick connects on here, and then the other side of the wires I put 3 female quick connects. So these wires will run over the engine, and I haven't decided how I'm going to do that yet. I think I'm probably going to try to thread them through the factory harness so it looks clean. You don't see all these colors, but these 3 wires are going to run over the engine because they need to get information from the DME, or at least that's where we're going to grab that information from, because the DME is reading your pedal angle, it's reading your crank position, it's for your RPM, and it's reading your clutch switch also as well, things like cruise control and whatnot. So we can grab those signals from down there, and that's what I'm going to do. So everything's prepped, and I'm going to move on to the next step. So I was looking at the wiring diagrams on Newtis, went back to those for reference. And again, I apologize for not doing this in real time, but you know, I'm working with what I got here. It is freezing in the garage as well, so if you don't have one, get yourself one of these propane heaters. I picked it up for like $100. They have them at Tractor Supply or Home Depot. It's like 60,000 BTU. It heats up a 2-car garage pretty well, but it is loud. And you know, run it for 30 minutes, work. Run it for 30 minutes, work. You know, whenever you want to take the chill out of the air. they work really well. But I was reviewing the diagrams on new TIS, and I was looking for which connector we're looking for in this electronics box. So, like I was saying earlier, power is coming into this post from the battery, going out to the starter. It's also coming into the electronics box to power a bunch of stuff. So these are the main wires. And I'm going to try to do this while holding my phone, so you can try and see. I'm identifying this as I'm recording. We've got 3 main power wires coming off that post. One of them goes to the ignition relay, and then subsequently the fuse, and then from the fuse back out to the ignition harness. The relay is called X6341, and that controls both your ignition and your injectors. And then, like I said, from power, from one of these 3 goes to one of these 2 relays. I haven't identified which one yet. And then from there, the 20 amp fuse is actually your coils. Your 15 amp is your injectors. So we're going to be looking for the wire that comes into here and then comes back out of here. And then, so it's going to be one of these 3. It's coming off this fuse block. And as you can see, we're on the right track, because those fuses all go into this bundle of wires, which goes to this back loom, which is going over your engine. And if you are familiar with the N55 DME, you know that this loom is your ignition harness. So before we go over to the DME and show that side of things, we need to identify which one of these wires is coming out of fuse 20 and powering the coils. And that's the power we want the WOT box to be interrupting. The coil's not charged, you can't fire. So that's how it keeps your RPM at a set point. It just basically causes the car to misfire. It cuts the coil power. So I'm going to cut here and get power interrupted to the coils. Okay, so back to this ignition harness. Pretty quick to figure out. I know it looks like a mess in here, but it's pretty simple stuff. Post, power, this bundle is going to one of those 3 wires is going to this relay here. This looks to be the ignition relay. Then you've got a couple wires coming off of that relay. 2 of them are going to your fuses. One of those wires is going to the 15 amp. One of those wires is going to the 20 amp. I'd rather cut post fuse than pre-fuse, right? You want this connection to be fused. So I want to work with these 2 wires that are coming back out of the fuses, which is this here. I've taken the tape off and I've ripped them out of their bundles. They were bundled with this, but I just pulled them out. So I know these are the 2 wires that I want to work with. One's ignition, one's coils. And they're going to that ignition wire loom. Which one is coils? I know my 20 amp is my coils. So I'm going to just pull that wire out, pull on it. And I can see it's this wire right here. This is my coil. So I'm going to cut this, and then you're going to follow the instructions on the WOT box, which I believe red is going to be the source, and then orange is going to be back out to the coils. You're not splicing into this, but you're cutting it and literally intercepting it. Red is going to be one side, orange is going to be the other, or vice versa. I don't want to mislead you. I got to go back and look at the instructions myself, but I believe it's red is going to be the hot side and orange is going to be out to the coils. So I'll make that connection, and then we're pretty much done on this side. We're almost finished with the install. I made my, like I've shown you before, I have the male and female quick connects. I just connected them down into this first chamber here where I'm going to drop the WOT box, and I ran them behind here, behind the, just shoved them down into the crack there, and I'm going to go underneath this far ignition loom. It's just going to run right underneath there and up into this weather stripping for the cowl. This was the cleanest way I could think of doing it. I did not see how I was going to be able to shove them up into this loom, and I don't feel like splitting that loom and ruining it. That's pretty clean. You're never going to see that wire. And then it's going to come down on the other side over there. Alright, so let me make this quick connection and then I'll show you what the final result looks like, and then we'll move over to the DME side where we're going to have to tap into a few informational sources, wires off the DME harness. So I've got my wiring harness all prepped. I've got my ground, I've got my 3 informational data wires that are going to go to the DME, and I've got my coils interrupted right here. Fuse 20, power, this bottom wire, the red and green is power out to the coils. So this red wire is power into the WOT box, orange is power out back to the coils, back to the red and green wire that goes to the ignition harness and to the DME, which the connector on the DME that this connects to controls all the ignition related stuff. Wires are tucked through here up into the weather stripping, and we'll move over to the other side of the car. Before I move on to the other side of the vehicle, I just wanted to show the inlet pipe going in. I know people have made comparison videos and pictures and whatnot, but yeah, the new inlet's a little bit bigger. Doesn't matter. Probably not gonna make any damn difference to anything. I mean, there's a science to this stuff. As you can see, how it necks down right there. Look how fat it is up there. There's a science to velocity and the speed at which the air is moving through the system. Just as important as what people refer to as restriction or whatnot. When you increase the power, do you need more airflow? Yes. Is this plastic pipe tuned to the increase in power? Probably not. I don't know. How much overhead does it have in it before it starts becoming a bottleneck? I really don't know. Does this pipe really free anything up? The dynos are questionable. They show the same peak horsepower as people's turbos, before the inlet install. So you post up strong numbers, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's from this inlet pipe. Maybe they're just running the turbo out to 99% wastegate duty. You never know, because they never post all the data you need to actually make a conclusion. But why would BMW have the inlet so fat here and then neck it down so much? It's intentional. It's done for a reason. But we'll give this a shot. Maybe the increased airflow from the slightly larger electronic wastegate style, or pure stage 1, whatever you want to call it. It has a larger compressor reel, making about 400 wheel horsepower. Maybe this pipe will help free up some restriction, but I'm not counting on it. Just figured I would do it. I got it for $100 from a guy that's changing platforms. His name is Weehee, or whatever his name is. You find this for sale thread. He's got all sorts of stuff for sale. Definitely check it out. See if there's anything there you might like. But I'm gonna pop this in, and not gonna do anything scientific. I was planning on doing before and after logs, checking wastegate duty cycle, but I'm not really convinced I'm gonna see much of anything that I'm gonna be able to see definitively. Maybe a couple % difference in wastegate duty cycle. 90% might drop to 85%, but you're talking about something that changes that much from pole to pole anyway. So let me pop this in, and then we'll move over to the other side of the car and finish up the wiring on the WOT box, and then go for a drive. Okay, now we're on to the fun stuff. So we wrapped everything up over there. We got the WOT box in place. We ran our 3 main data wires over to this side of the car. We've got our green is our clutch wire, so the car knows whether the clutch is up or down. Yellow is our RPM wire. That's going to feed into the crank position sensor information. And blue is our gas. This lets us know, obviously, if we're wide open throttle or not, if we're holding the gas down while we're shifting, and getting ready for launch control. So my plan is to posy tap into some of these DME wires, which I've identified the pins where this data is being fed into. So before I identify the specific wires, I just want to show you the DME and explain which connectors each connector is. So we have 3 main harnesses here. We have this is X1, X2, X3. It's like X6001, X6002, X6003. but I'll just refer to them as X1, X2, X3, X4. There's 3 connectors here on the right side, 4, 5, and then 6. One on the far right there, that's your ignition. So we spliced into this ignition over there, so we don't need to do anything on this end of the car. What we're going to be messing with, I think, primarily are the X1 harness and the X2 harness. They're right next to each other. Perfect. And they're the easier ones to get to. Alright, so before we go any further with that, I need to explain something. Don't take these off until you have labeled them. There are people that have switched these two on accident, and when you put them in the wrong slot, you end up frying shit. You end up burning out sensors, your oil pressure sensor, your O2 sensors, whatever the hell is on this harness, shit shorts out. These two can be interchanged accidentally. The way I remember it, connector 1, there's only 1 loom going to it. Connector 2, there's 2 looms going to it. Connector 3, I believe, also has 2 looms going to it, but this one's very obvious. You know, there's a difference here. Point being, take some masking tape, whatever you need to do to remember the order that these go into, because you have to take all 3 out and you have to put all 3 back in, and they have to go back in the right way. So, starting from the left, you have to take the left one out first to get these 2 out because of the way these doors open on the connector. And it's hard to see on the video, but there's a little tab there. Basically what you do is you press that tab, this swings down. Let me see if I can do it on video. I'm not going to be able to do it with one hand, but you pinch the tab, push this locking tab to the right, and then this whole connector comes up. It's like a self-locking mechanism, and the same thing when you go to put it back in, you push this connector down, and then you have to close the door at the same time, close the latch at the same time you're pressing down, and it locks it in place. You know, it pulls itself into the DME. So connector 3 is to come out first, then 2, then 1, and then in reverse order when you're putting them back together. 1, then 2, then 3. And like I said, I will continue when I have identified the wires here. I know that the green clutch wire has to go to the blue-brown wire on pin 31 of connector 1. So there's a blue-brown wire in this bundle somewhere. We'll just posy tap into that. And then on connector 2, I need to identify, and there's a lot more wires here to work with, but I need to identify 2 wires in this bundle. One is going to be, actually I'm sorry, there's only 1 wire in this connector 2. It's a yellow wire. And it looks like there's a bunch of yellow wires in there, but actually right on the top there is a nice yellow wire. That might be the one, but I'll figure out which ones those are, and the pin diagram and some more detailed information like on the connectors and everything I'll put in the description below the video, and probably a link to a DIY that I'll throw up on Spool Street or whatnot. But this gives you the general idea of what we're doing here. Tapping into 2 wires on connector 1 and 1 wire on connector 2. Alright, let me identify which wires and I'll get back to you. Alright, so this was fairly easy. This is connector 1, and I had the order reversed earlier just to clarify. Connector 1 has to come out first, then 2, then 3, and then vice versa, 3, then 2, then 1. So I have connector 1 out of the box there. Again, just to show you up close, it sits in there like this. You have to push this little pin in, and then this latch comes undone like that, and then it pulls up. So now looking at it from the back side, just to show you if you've never done this before, BMW is very nice to us. Can't knock the German engineering. They put the pin out where the starting point right on the connector. So you got right where my thumb is here. If you look really closely, there's a 1. At the top you see 33, and on the top left you see, what is that, 40? I don't know, I can't see it, but point being, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you count from 1, go to the left. Second row starts at 17, goes to the left, and so on and so forth. So we were looking for pin 31 for our green clutch wire on this connector, and a blue and yellow wire, or a blue wire, on pin 14 or 15. So they actually both end up being in this top right corner. If you flip the harness over, you'll see where I pulled the wires out a little bit. Here's our blue-brown wire on pin 31. And then here's our yellow-white wire and our blue wire right next to each other on pin 14 and pin 15. Sorry, I'm grabbing the wrong ones there. It's these two wires right here. Again, where my thumb is. They're a little dirty, but those are the right wires. Those two wires are redundant signals from the accelerator pedal. You can tap either one, 14 or 15, whichever pin you like. One is signal 1, one is signal 2. I guess that's for emergencies where something goes wrong with the gas pedal. I don't know, but it's a redundant signal. The WOT box says to tap into the blue wire, the white and yellow wire, which is signal 2. That's what I'm going to do. Doesn't really matter though. They're both right next to each other, easy to get to. So I was going to tap into whatever one was easier, and luckily they're both right on the top right here. You can see them as soon as you flip the harness over. But again, I'm using posy taps, not the most reliable connection. The other thing you can do is you can take a razor blade, cut around in a circle around the wire on, you know, 1 inch apart, and then split this sheathing off, expose the wires, and then wrap your host wire, or wrap your feed wire right off this host wire. I was just doing a Honda Civic actually that didn't have pinouts, and I wasn't using posy taps. I was wrapping the wires around the bare copper. I'm going to try the posy taps for this because I think they'll be reliable enough in this job, and this stuff's easy to get to. If I have a problem with my signals, I can redo these, but right now I'm going to try to minimize my impact on my wiring harnesses here and try the posy taps. And I'm putting them higher up on the loom because once this is down and into there, I need to be able to get to this. And using the wiring chart that I'll link to in the description, you're going to want to do the same thing for connector 2 and find pin 6, which is the yellow wire for your RPM signal from your crank position sensor. Again, shouldn't be too bad if this is numbered and you're not colorblind. You should be able to find the yellow wire. Alright, that's about it. And after that, we'll move over to the laptop and get this thing programmed, if we did everything right. Alright, sorry if it's a little loud, but got the install all wrapped up. Car's running. I ran the testing procedures per the WOT Box install guide. Throttle was 1.9 volts all the way down, so I set that at 1.9. RPM signal was picking up properly. Everything looks good. It's ready for a test drive. But you can see there's no wires showing, except right here. You can see where the wires come down from the weather stripping that's behind the cowl. But otherwise, pretty clean install. You can't really see anything. Car's running fine, ready to go for a drive.